Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this workshop on the weaponization of anti-Semitism. My name is Andreas Bieler. I'm here a professor at the University of Nottingham, and I'm also the vice president of the local university and college union branch. And our branch has been engaged in Palestine solidarity activities over recent months and years. We have, for example, a BDS pledge, which we ask our staff members to sign because we want to put pressure on our management to divest from arms manufacturing companies, to dealing from Israeli higher education institutions, and to divest from companies which are operating in Israel, so in line with our BDS pledge. Now, today is an official workplace day of action in support of Palestine. And it was our idea that it would be a good moment to critically reflect on the way of how anti-Semitism has been defined and indeed has been used to silence certain criticisms of Israel. And it's my pleasure to have two high-profile speakers with us today. We will first hear from Lubna Speitan, who is a British Palestinian artist and activist, a co-founder of the Greenwich Palestine Alliance, and focuses in her work on anti-genocide advocacy and grassroots organizing. Welcome, Lubna. And our second speaker is Professor Haim Bresheeth-Zabner, a historian, filmmaker, photographer, and film studies scholar who currently is working at SOAS in London. You have a high-profile CV, Haim, and I'm just going to mention a couple of achievements, not exhaustive of all your work, but you are the author with Stuart Hood on Introduction to the Holocaust. And amongst your films, one well-known one is A State of Danger, 1989, with the BBC, which was on the first Palestinian Intifada. Now, the way we're going to do it is that first, Lubna, you're going to speak. You told me for about 10 minutes. Then, Haim, you can directly follow Lubna. I would argue for perhaps 15 to a maximum of 20 minutes. And that will then leave us with another 25 minutes or so for questions, debates, and of course also gives our panelists a chance to get back to the question. So without further ado, Lubna, over to you. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you. Well, it's made a great introduction. Thank you for your introduction. And my life, like so many Palestinians, has been cleaved by the genocidal onslaught that began in October 23. Before this, my world was one of art. I did counselling for local mental health services, and today I'm a founding member of Greenwich Palestine Alliance, formed in response to the massacre of our people. I also serve as the Equality in Palestine Officer for Unite Community, Greenwich, Lewisham and Bexley. My family, like countless others, has endured unimaginable loss at the hands of the Israeli state, with 56 of our own relatives slaughtered in this current genocide, many more from before under Israel's decades of brutal occupation and apartheid practices. Currently, in the West Bank, as we speak, my family are being torn from their homes again, as Israel continues its annexation of our lands. I just returned 2 months ago from the West Bank, witnessing disturbing scenes, the existence of my family under the oppressor's boot. It was one that has left me with memories that you just can't forget. Every area and aspect of their life it's just insufferable. You know, the drones, the surveillance state, the checkpoints, the general oppression and dehumanization that continually plagues every Palestinian's life out there. The casual killings of Palestinians and the raids, the robberies of their shops. I was in Jerusalem, in the old city, when the Israelis actually stormed it. They came from Al-Aqsa and then they stormed the shops. And they loot, they just take all the belongings of the Palestinians, their hard-earned wages, the torture in their, I don't even call them prisons, I think they're actually known as torture camps, it results in the brutality is such that even when people are released, there's so many suicides that take place. My cousin is one of many who is being held hostage in their torture camps, and his friend was released after a 20-year sentence a week after returning, walked to the top of his building and jumped. And this is just to serve as an example, one of many of the horrors in which they have to live under that regime. It's a regime whose brutality is enabled by Western imperialist allies. And my art has now been replaced by my activism, my hope by a relentless pursuit of liberation. Our work in GPA, Greenwich Palestine Alliance, is simple in its aim but complex in its execution to build tangible solidarity with the Palestinian struggle guided by the global BDS movement. Since October 23, we've engaged in a series of relentless campaigns, from also pressuring our local authorities to support both ceasefire and withdraw all investments from Israel. We advocate for full, immediate and permanent divestment. We're engaging with council employees, revealing how their pensions, funding apartheid and through the local government pension scheme, and are mobilizing trade unions, pushing them to act on their existing policies through resolutions, public declarations, and to protect workers who act, including through strike action. We collaborate widely with solidarity groups, producing a vast array of campaign literature and model resolutions, as well as actions. Our work is also historical. Through archival research, we've recovered powerful legacy from the 1980s, when the same councils proudly declared themselves as anti-apartheid zones and committed to BDS against South Africa apartheid. Today, these same councils fail that very principle. They are now participants. So we're escalating, we're pursuing legal action against those complicit through investments and supporting cases for the arrests of UK citizens who've committed war crimes with the IOF. We call them Israeli occupation forces. And crucially, we're deepening our worker-led action with trade unionists for Palestine. But in all of this, we've come up against a wall of state repression designed to silence us. Our activists face arrests on spurious grounds of public disorder and accusations of anti-Semitism. The state weaponizes anti-terror legislation and public space protection orders, you might know them as PSPOs, to strip us of our rights to speak. In our local divestment campaign, the council continually obfuscated, stifles free speech and denies local democracy. Pro-Palestine protesters were accused of anti-Semitism, which we challenged and received both written and public apology for. Their dismissal of our concerns and their complete lack of solidarity reflect an underpinning of racism when it comes to Palestinian lives. It's not new. You may recall its prominence during the Corbyn era, which is a textbook example of smear campaigns used to suppress free speech and target leading critics of Israeli apartheid. Figures like Jeremy Corbyn, Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, Mark Wadsworth, Ken Livingstone, Tony Greenstein, and many more were subjected to it. At the heart of this silencing strategy is the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Just in case you're not familiar with that, it's the International Holocaust and Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, which was adopted in 2016. Though non-legally binding, it has become a political cudgel. The result is censorship. Many have become nervous to speak out, terrified of being slapped with the anti-Semite stick or losing the Labour whip. They've weaponized a definition against us to make our very existence, our very brief, a subject for debate and accusation. The IHRA definition is not a shield for the vulnerable. It's rather a sword to silence legitimate dissent. At its core, it's a politically motivated document, weaponized to suppress criticism of the Israeli state and advocacy for Palestinian rights. By conflating anti-Zionism, the opposition to a political ideology of ethnic supremacy, with anti-Semitism, and by defining it as anti-Semitic to describe Israel as a racist endeavor, it seeks to criminalize a moral and factual position. Yet the truth is undeniable. Israel is a racist endeavor. It's an ethno-nationalist apartheid state founded upon the dispossession and ongoing subjugation of my indigenous Palestinian people, a people who have paid the price for European and Western crimes for over 77 years. The definition's been widely and actively promoted by the Israeli government to shield it from accountability whilst attacking free speech, protest, and human rights advocacy. It has also enabled false accusations against students, academics, activists, and anti-Zionist Jews. although it's been condemned by over 100 human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, B'Tselem, and the ACLU, which is the American Civil Liberties Union. Also, its author, the original author, Kenneth Stern, has opposed its institutional adoption, warning it endangers free speech. Well, I'd like to be clear, the IHRA definition doesn't combat hate. It fosters it. It creates a hierarchy of racism, signaling that some forms of bigotry are more acceptable than others. It's inherently discriminatory and marginalizes Palestinian voices and delegitimizing anti-Zionist Jewish perspectives. Furthermore, it violates the fundamental principles of equality enshrined in the Human Rights Act and Equality Act, which are designed to protect everyone without such prejudice. This definition harms the right and the fight against all racism. It establishes a dangerous hierarchy, privileging the fight against anti-Jewish prejudice while ignoring and even enabling anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian discrimination. The term anti-Semitism is itself problematic, as it linguistically erases other Semitic peoples, which includes Arabs and Palestinians. The Semitic languages, Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, belong to those native to the region. As a Palestinian, I am a Semite. If we mean hatred or discrimination of Jewish people, we should say anti-Jewish hate or discrimination, clearly and without this conflation. To be truly anti-racist, we must use clear, specific language that cannot be weaponized to deny the identity and rights of others. In the face of a live-stream genocide, those who uphold a definition designed to shield a racist state are complicit. The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, has issued warnings on this complicity, and the UN recognizes Israel is committing genocide. The IHRA and the JDA definitions are a key tool in this structure of denial and impunity. I ask, what use are Equality Acts and anti-discrimination laws if we accept a definition that creates a superiority of one people's rights over another? What does it say when we legitimize a tool that exists to normalize an illegitimate state whose very foundation is the suppression of a people? We as Palestinians, we're not asking for example, a new definition of anti-Palestinian discrimination. The spectacle of genocide is evidence enough. Instead, we demand the abolition of these flawed political instruments. We call for the universal, equal application of the Equality Act 2010, which protects all races and religions without creating hierarchies. We ask for institutions to honor their past commitments against apartheid and racism, and we ask to rescind the IHRA definition and reject its alternatives, like the Jerusalem Declaration of Antisemitism, which contains similar flaws that attempt to normalize an oppressive state. So when we talk about rejecting the IHRA and Jerusalem Declaration and definitions alike, we're not speaking in abstracts. We're talking about our lived reality. The fight against these definitions is not a side issue, but an integral part to our struggle for justice and liberation. It's about reclaiming the right to define our own oppression, to narrate our own grief, and to demand our freedom without being falsely branded as bigots. The definition protects not Jewish people, but a racist state. And just as we oppose Nazi Germany and its Holocaust of the Jewish people, we oppose Zionist Israel and its Holocaust of the Palestinian people. Our campaign will continue until the walls of complicity and the definitions that uphold them come tumbling down. And we hope that you'll join us in standing firmly for equality to all and rescind and reject both those definitions along with alternatives. We have also formulated a resolution that's been passed by several union branches, supported by Ilan Pape and many other prominent academics, including Rabbi Beck, actually, who issued a supporting statement on it. We're happy to share these and welcome your input. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to introduce my good friend and ally, Professor Haim Bresheeth. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Lubna, for that powerful intervention and also sharing your personal story. It would be good, please do share that motion with us. Yeah, we can then look to also adopt it here at Nottingham University. So thanks for that. Haim, over to you.
Thank you very much. My dear friend Lubna is a difficult act to follow, but I shall do my best. Thank you, Lubna. I agree with every single word you have said, and I will try to give a slightly academic, not too academic, I hope, background to what Israel did with the IHRA and why it was necessary according to them. I am a son of two Holocaust survivors, as it happens, and apart from my parents, both families were totally eradicated from the face of the earth, like so many Palestinian families in the last 2 years. My parents have never required an IHRA definition for anti-Semitism. They knew what anti-Semitism is. It's hatred towards Jews because they are Jews. That is all the definition we needed in history. Now, I'm going to give a background to the development of anti-Semitism, which is a 19th century development, invention, I would say. And any book that you read or any article that you read that tells you that anti-Semitism is as old as the hills, that's one book for the dustpan. Now, I put in the chat the article on which my talk is based, so you will be able to read it in detail. I will try and finish in 15 minutes. I'll share my screen now, if you don't mind, so you can see. Can you see my screen?
It works, thank you.
Fine, thank you very much. Now, I place the birth of modern racism in the 16th century in Spain. That is after the reconquering of Spain from the Muslims that were there together with Jews and Christians for 800 years without racism, without Islamophobia, without anti-Christian movement, and without anti-Semitism. So the 800 years under the Muslims were the best period anyone had in Europe. When the Christians come back, they instigate racism, and modern racism is different from anything that happened before, because the concept which you can see is called limpieza de sangre, the cleanliness of blood, is a concept that takes the difference from the realm of religion, in other words, ideas. You have your ideas, I have my ideas, to the realm of the body, to the blood. Today, we call this genes. At the time, they didn't have that kind of language, and they talked about unclean blood and clean blood. Clean blood was Christian blood that has never been mixed with Jewish or Muslim blood, and they created the machinery to police the society, and that was the Inquisition, of course. And the Spanish Inquisition, I don't need to tell you much about, because I'm sure you know. And in the society, after the Christians started again controlling Spain after 1492, they actually ejected all the Muslims and all the Jews that refused to convert to Christianity in 1492. We're talking about almost 1 million people that were rejected out of Spain for being unchristian. Of course, this was against agreements signed by Muslims and Christians and Jews that allowed those communities to continue living and practicing their religion. The Christians broke all those agreements exactly in the way that Israel is breaking agreements today. Now, I can't really share. I'll stop the share because it's too complicated for me to do so. Yeah, I'll stop the share. And you will not see the pictures, but that's less important. Now, I want to say very briefly that what we have today is not popular anti-Semitism, but actually popular Islamophobia. And I will try and prove that in my short talk. And this is the situation since the 9th century, when the incursion of Muslims into Europe has been very well established by the 9th century. And as I said, the Muslims brought basically only good things to Europe. They brought science, they brought Arabic, that was the language of science and art at the time. They brought new developments in the different sciences, in philosophy, in physics, in chemistry. The word chemistry is coming from the Arabic. In Arabic, chemistry is al-khimya. So today we know it as alchemy, yeah? But al-khimya is chemistry in Arabic. Many of the words in Latin and in Spanish are Arabic words. The map making, geography, astronomy, modern mathematics, algebra. Algebra is an Arabic word, of course, yeah? So all these came from the Arab Muslims and the Jewish Arabs that came from North Africa and brought the latest science, the latest art, the latest industry to a Europe that was very, very backward in many ways. I want to end this by saying that without the conquest of Spain and the 800 years of Al-Andalus, Europe will never have the amazing period of the 15th and 16th century that we know today as the Renaissance. Without that, the Renaissance could not happen. And the science that the Arabs brought allowed Columbus to find America, to find the new route to India, and to actually draw the maps of the world more accurately for the first time. And when I say that Arabs brought a society where Christian Jews and Muslims could live together for 800 years, it's not just in Spain, it is all over the Middle East, North Africa, Arabia, what was then to become the Ottoman Empire, Sicily, well, all the Mediterranean islands, not just Sicily, and of course parts of southern France, parts of southern Italy, and parts of Greece, and surprisingly, Iran and India. What we today call this period of living together is the Spanish word convivencia, meaning life together. And this is in Jewish tradition called the golden time. Okay, so in Jewish tradition, this was the best time the Jews have ever had in Europe, and this is very true. Now, there was no anti-Semitism because there was no reason for it. So the racism that comes in with the reconquest of Spain, and the need to get rid of the non-Christian, so the non-Christians, in the same way that the Israeli Jews are getting rid of the Palestinians. By the way, the Jews that were rejected out of Spain as, you know, racial bastards were very popular in the largest empire of the Mediterranean, the Ottoman Empire, that invited them into the empire and benefited greatly from their skills in the different sciences. Now, it would be the 19th century before the word anti-Semitism was invented. But Judeophobia, the hatred of Jews, was quite popular in Europe after the 15th and 16th centuries. From Spain came a very toxic brand of anti-Jewish hatred, and it was very popular with the regimes that used the Jews to isolate themselves from the masses. I don't think that you need to need me to tell you that anti-Semitism was a very popular development in the 19th and 20th century, especially in the 20th century. And by the way, the word was invented by an anti-Semite. And of course, you can see on the screen that I'm hardly a Semite myself, unlike my dear friend Lubna. The Jews of Europe are not Semite, they're not Semitic. They were from tribes in a place called Khazar, which is between the Caspian and the Black Sea, converting to Judaism in the 10th century and speaking a language which is a combination of a number of European languages called Yiddish, which means Jewish. And that language was actually based on German. It's basically what we today call Hochdeutsch. It doesn't, it's no more spoken in most of Germany, only in very small parts. So the Jews actually preserved two very old languages, Hochdeutsch and Old Castilian, which they still speak in Mizrahi communities in Palestine and elsewhere. Now, why did we need a way of defining anti-Semitism when it was clear to anyone that has lived in the 20th century what anti-Semitism was? Anti-Semitism did not allow Jews to live like others, despite the fact that Napoleon has freed the Jews from Judeophobia by law. So wherever the French army passed, Jews received full citizens' right, not before Napoleon. But what happened in the 19th century is Christian white supremacism is attacking Jews in a new way, which they called scientific. And the name was given by the father of this, and he called it anti-Semitism in order not to call it Jew hatred. Yeah, but those Jews were not Semites, and it wasn't anti-Semitism. It was the old Judeophobia. Now, why did the Israeli and some Zionists need a new definition of anti-Semitism? Because in Israel, even before this came up, everyone who criticized Israel was actually tainted as an anti-Semite. when I was a child, we learned at school that the whole world is against us being the Jews. And Israel called itself a Jewish state. I want to say to you, as an Israeli Jew, there is nothing Jewish about Israel. Okay? Shall I say it again? There is nothing Jewish about Israel. Why am I saying it? Because there is nothing Jewish about settler colonialism. The Jews were not settler colonialist nation. There is nothing Jewish about racism and hatred. Jews suffered from racism. They didn't do it. There is nothing Jewish about genocide. Jews died in genocides. They were not doing genocides. 2,000 years of European history are evidence that there is nothing Jewish about Israel. Israel is living like a European supremacist state with the worst of racism in history applied towards the original people of Palestine, the Palestinians. And I want to come to an end by telling you who the Palestinians are. The Prime Minister of Israel, the first one, Ben-Gurion, was ejected out of Palestine during the First World War, together with his good friend, who became the president of Israel after it was created in 1948. But this was in 1915. They were two Zionists working in Israel, in Palestine. They ended up in New York, a good Jewish state at the time, very left-wing, very progressive. And they wrote a book that argued that we don't need to get rid of the Palestinians like Zionism has taught them, and Herzl has written in the 19th century in his diary. They found another solution. The book was published in Yiddish, by the way. And the book argued something very interesting. Their research proven to them that the Palestinians living in Palestine are the old Hebrews. And those old Hebrews have converted first to Christianity at the time of Jesus and afterwards, and later into Islam when the Muslim Arabs arrive in Palestine. These people never left Palestine. It was their country. And they changed their religion, but they didn't change their country and didn't change their nationality. And they admitted that, Ben-Gurion and Ben-Zvi, and therefore came up with a solution. Instead of getting rid of them, we will turn them back into Jews. Now, that to us sounds like exactly European racism. And of course it didn't happen. But, and they didn't go ahead with this plan, but that is what the book is suggesting. So they knew that the Palestinians are the original people of Palestine. And yet they didn't agree to accept them without a conversion. And when that conversion was obviously impractical, they changed their position to the normal Zionist position of getting rid of all Palestinians from their country, Palestine. And to do that, Lubna has told you why anti-Semitism, the accusation of anti-Semitism, the spurious accusation of anti-Semitism was necessary in order to besmirch everyone criticizing Israel as a racist and as an anti-Semite. I think I probably overstayed my welcome So I'll end here and be very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Haim, for this fascinating, also historical overview. Excellent. So we've had two powerful interventions, colleagues. We still have a good 20 minutes time for contributions, questions. So please, if you could raise your hand electronically, and I will then call on you and ask you to speak. Who is going to set us off? Any questions, thoughts? Yes, David, please go ahead.
So I wrote my undergraduate journalism dissertation about how the media coverage of Israel, Palestine is very much biased against the Palestinians, because, as you've said, Israel is viewed as a European civilized state. And I suppose the question is, have you seen the, well, do you think that the media is biased against Palestinians and Arabs in general?
Thank you. Do we have a couple of more questions? Other colleagues who would like to come in? Perhaps I can raise a question then. So you briefly touched upon also the Jerusalem definition, and I've heard people arguing that why the IHRA definition should be rejected for the reasons you've also outlined. The Jerusalem definition might be a positive alternative. Perhaps if you could say a bit more about why also the Jerusalem definition is problematic. Okay, so
Do you want to start, Lubna?
Yeah,
Over to you.
I don't mind. First of all, thank you so much, David, for your question. And yes, absolutely, the media are just as complicit. I'd actually dare go far enough to say participant. It's the same they did with the Congolese, the demonization of everyone. Absolutely, Dave Cannon's holding up the book here, if you can see that. But they are, and they play a major role in the propaganda war machine, which, of course, as we've seen, it demonizes resistance historically. This is what they do. They prescribe resistance as terrorist organizations. Anyone who resists colonial oppression is demonized with those terms. And most definitely, the media has a very big role and has played a very negative role in mass misinformation. I hope that's answered your question for you, David. Thank you for that question. And in response, Andreas, to the Jerusalem Declaration, yes, just as flawed. I note from memory just the first point B1 of that definition. It creates a hierarchy of racism and superioritizes the rights of Jewish people over everyone else. This is the problem with these definitions, and that explains and expresses that basically racism against Jews is worse than racism against anyone else. That is one big problem with that. And B10 states that Jews have the rights to flourish in Israel. Again, denying, one, us as Palestinians the right to flourish in our own homelands, and two, creating that hierarchy. I mean, normalizing and legitimizing a genocidal, racist, ethno-nationalist state. And that's just 2 points. I mean, you could take these things apart and write dissertations on them, but they're two basic and prominent points that I recall from memory working with them and the issues that they display. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, I see you raising your hand. I'm just asking Haim first if he wants to respond, and then I give you the word. Haim,
There is no definition of hatred against blacks, hatred against Muslims, hatred against any other group. There are many forms of racism, and none of them requires a definition or ever demanded one. Yeah, we are very clear about what racism is. This is really interesting. The definition, either IHRA or the other one, basically are saying that Jews are better than others. Let's just talk about what anti-Semitism is, because it isn't what we are seeing now. Anti-Semitism was when Jews could not join universities, they could not work as professionals, they could not buy land, they could not till the land, they could not move from their place of whichever town they were. They had to live in ghettos. They had to wear special clothes and special hats, so they were immediately identifiable and punishable by all kind of punishments. Jews had no rights whatsoever. They were like the Palestinians of Israel today and the Palestinians in Palestine. They had no rights whatsoever and nothing to protect them. This is not the situation of Jews anywhere. Jews in the West are the strongest minority that we know. The idea that they are suffering anti-Semitism is incredible. Anti-Semitism is a situation where Jews were actually killed in their hundreds and thousands by huge pogroms organized by the Russian government or the Ukrainian government, etc. Are you trying to tell me that this is what is happening? This is nonsensical. So we don't need a special definition. We know what we see today is hatred towards the brutality of Israel. It's not against Jews, though most Jews are still supporting Israel. It's the hatred of what Israel is doing to human beings like us. And yes, David, you're totally right. The media is actually part of the hatred of Muslims. The media is breeding Islamophobia, not anti-Semitism, but Islamophobia. Most racism in Europe today is Islamophobia. We now have parties in Britain which are Islamophobic, like the Reform Party, and they are likely to rule Britain pretty soon. I hope I'm wrong. So what we should be worried about is not hatred towards Jews, because Jews are not hated. Unless they're Zionists, and I myself am an anti-Zionist Jew. I am trying to end Zionism as a form of racism. And that's why I am also called an anti-Semite. Like Lubna, that's what we're doing. We're trying to end Zionism because it harms not only the Palestinians, but Jews. So we are against it, and we will continue to be against it.
Thank you. Jenny Clark. You need to unmute yourself.
Yes. I think your last speaker answered some of the questions that I was sort of been puzzling about, really. I was appalled by some of the comments by our shadow leaders. And it makes me wonder what the motivation is with our leaders with regard to not actually calling out actual genocide that's actually happening in Israel and in Gaza. I don't understand what the investment is. I understand there's some sort of power play, but it confuses me. So listening to this debate, I'm trying to get some sort of form of clarity about what I see as a set of naive comments or poor ineffective actions on behalf of people who are supposed to govern us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I answer
Yes,
Jenny?
please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Jenny, you remember that David, in his questions, asked us about European civilization.
Mm.
Well, European civilization is a misnomer. Europeans are probably the least civilized people on this earth. They invented industrial slavery. They invented mass genocide. They invented capitalism. They invented colonialism. They invented so many ways of destroying the people of the third world. And Britain was the main culprit. And Britain, 107 years ago, has put its money on Zionism. A lot of people think that we should actually blame the Americans for Zionism. The Americans had nothing to do with it at the time. In 1916, the British Empire put its money on Zionism and got Zionism to control Palestine through a British contract called a mandate. And for 30 years, it actually helped Zionism to build an unequal society in Palestine. So first of all, this is part of European European civilization. Yeah, it's not civilized, it's not legal, it's not moral, but that's what our history tells us. And do remember, this is what the English did in Ireland. Ireland was the first of the colonies. Palestine is the last of the colonies. The empire doesn't exist, but its links with the colony exist now for 108 years or 107 years, and they refuse to give up. This is the only country that has supported Zionism for more than 100 years. This is shameful. It all started here in London, where I'm now sitting, few miles from where I live, and it kept on going for more than a century. This is not civilized. This is not legal. This is not right.
Thank you. Lubna, would you like to come in, or shall I go to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I think Brother Haim answered it very well. I would sum it up with the short of it is Israel is the imperialist watchdog of the Middle East. It's their colonialist project. And when people refer to the guilt of the West for the crimes against Jews, in fact, I think that's still very much existent and apparent today. The fact that they wanted to repay or revoke, the wrongdoings that they had then, well, they could give them back the homes that they forced them to flee. But instead, they've given away a land they had no right to give. They carved up our regions with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, then the Balfour Declaration. All of this was wrong. They had no right to do it. It should never have been done. And I will only ever advocate for the full liberation of our people and indeed every oppressed people with it. I hope that was a nice little analysis or breakdown.
It does. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the contributions. I just wanted to know exactly what the legal standing of the IHRA is. Does it have a legal standing, and if not, is it being challenged?
No, there is no, it's a non-legally binding definition. It has no legal standing. In fact, it's arguably illegal. There's many cases that have been brought against the spurious grounds in which it has been used to silence people. Infamously, there's the recent, the David Miller case, in which it resulted as him having defined the anti-Zionism as now a corrected characteristic. It is, there are so many challenges that's been brought against it. None have held up in court. Even our barrister Frank McGuinness has taken one that I urge you to look into, the Hussein case. And all of the examples that were used to express those traits of being anti-Semitic were actually ruled out. Therefore, there is literally no grounding. The only thing that they will do is literally to scaremonger people into silence. So they will drag them through the mud, smear them with this And at the end, if it did get to court based on this definition, it all just falls flat on its face. So there is just literally no point. That's why it's legally binding. It has literally been weaponized and designed to do what it's doing, and that is to silence dissent and discriminate against us as Palestinians and also anti-Zionist Jews and advocates of our rights. So yeah, in short, there is no legal standing for it. Quite the latter.
Okay.
Can I say that I was in a number of British court defending academics that were accused of being anti-Semitic because they criticized Israel. I always used to undermine the IHRA, and the judges accepted it. It has no standing in court, and it has no standing in logic, because throughout the existence of European anti-Semitism, Israel was not there. Yeah, criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. It's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It's criticizing a country that acts illegally according to the UN and the international conventions. So not only are we allowed to criticize Israel when it creates genocide and other crimes, we need to do that according to the legislation. All of us are required to bring genocide to an end. As individuals, as social structures, we need to end genocide in every way we can. So actually, to criticize Israel is the best thing we can do and the most legal position that we can take.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. So Daniel, over to you for the last question. Then we go back one final time to our speakers. Daniel.
Yes. So I was wondering, because we're talking so much about the history behind anti-Semitism and regarding modern day Islamophobia, and so it made me wonder, what lessons can we learn about the struggles against anti-Semitism and Judeophobia historically within the West to help us understand how we fight against the deep Islamophobic, Zionist, anti-Palestinian propaganda today, especially when it's been so predominant within the media consensus?
Thank you. Lubna and Haim, over to you.
I would say we continue to do what we're doing. We have this dialogue, we educate people, we challenge all forms of discrimination. And with it, I mean, this is why there's an importance on rescinding. I myself oppose any definitions being needed because of the hierarchy of racism that it does create. But therefore, to apply instead the Equalities Act 2010 and every other anti-discrimination policy that we have in place that is for that purpose, is to uphold those things. And when there is any form of discrimination, for us to challenge that. And also remember not to conflate and or accept conflations which create other forms of racism or discrimination against other groups of people. So challenging it, like I explained what we did with our council when there was an accusation of anti-Semitism, and as we're seeing, and I'm a Muslim, and there is a major increase of Islamophobia, it is rife. Even sadly, I've seen it within movements, some unconscious racism, which I will actually, if I may, take the liberty of just addressing one thing that has been a concern, for example, as a Muslim and as a Palestinian, when our comrades across the movement say, you know, I stand for a single democratic Palestinian state, everyone has equal rights, no one is discriminated against, as it was. But there are some that would impose secular on that. Irrespective of their views, you have to understand that you're talking to a majority Muslim population who has the right to self-determination and the right to elect their own governance, right? So this I implore people to consider when these things are thrown out there. It is an unconscious undercurrent of racism or Islamophobia rather, and it's about applying a godless ideology onto a majority Muslim population. It is a problem, and these small things are challenged by having these discussions and this debate. And I think it's so important that we continue to do that and continue to address it, and only in having these discussions and in knowing each other and understanding what each of us finds as discriminatory towards us, can we then identify and address those issues? Yeah, and changing and addressing the narrative of the media as well, which has been, as David pointed out earlier, quite a dangerous additional weaponization tool.
Thank you, Lubna. Haim.
I'll be very brief because I can see that time is running out. Lubna has given a marvelous answer for this. I want to say that as a historian, I normally go back in history to learn from it what we can do in the future. And one thing we can do, learning from history, is go back to the period that Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together in harmony, and which harmony has actually built the Renaissance, as I said. It built the future. It was constructive rather than, like Zionism, destructive. So the understanding between Jews and non-Jews is the basis of fighting anti-Semitism. And convivencia was the reason that there was no anti-Semitism in Spain under the Muslims. And the work that we anti-Zionist Jews are doing with the Palestinians to free Palestine of its occupation, of the brutality of Zionism, of the genocide, of the starvation, of the lack of rights, of the lack of humanity that Israel has brought to Palestine, of the kind of civilization of Nazism that Israel has brought to Palestine. This is neither Jewish nor human, and we together, Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, have to fight to eradicate this, like we eradicated apartheid from South Africa. And to end, I want to say, in South Africa, in the case of South Africa, fighting apartheid did not mean two states. We didn't come and say, we want a state for whites and a state for blacks. No, we didn't. We said one state for everyone with full rights for all. And that is what Lubna and myself and many other millions are wishing for Palestine. A society that doesn't separate people, but brings them together, keeps them, protects them from any dangers, rather than exposes them to anti-Semitism of the kind that the Israelis are using against the Palestinians. I think that is the way to do it. To end Zionism is the best tool of ending anti-Semitism.
Thank you very much to our two speakers, Lubna and Haim, for that wonderful workshop, for these wonderful, powerful interventions. There has been a ceasefire signed today in relation to the Gaza conflict. That's, of course, to be welcomed, but we also know that Palestinian liberation is still a long, long way off. So the struggle really carries on. If you work here at the University of Nottingham, please sign our BDS pledge. If you work elsewhere, please work towards Palestinian liberation in your area. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you very much, Haim.